Hello everyone, it's Paul with Tutor U, and I'm back with part 2 of the GED Science Quick Start. So to carry on from where we left off, chemical reactions. So that's another part that you will have to have some general understanding of when you take the GED Science test, okay? And what that will entail, you don't need to know all of the different elements, you don't need to know all of those types of things, but you will have to have a basic understanding of what a chemical reaction is. And what a chemical reaction is, it's a process in which one or more of substances, that the reactants, are converted to one or more different substances, the products. So you have reactants and products when it comes to a chemical reaction. I like to think of this like baking a cake. Okay, so you have your flour, you have your sugar, you have your milk. Those are your react or that's your reactants. Okay, and once you put them all together and bake them, that's going to be your product. Okay, that'll be the cake. So it goes through a chemical reaction. Okay, chemical reactions cannot be undone. Uh, and that's one of the big things to differ between a physical change and a chemical change. So you want to ask yourself, can I undo this? Okay. So if you bend up a piece of aluminum foil, you crinkle it up, can you undo it? Yes, absolutely. It might not be perfect, but you can undo that folding of aluminum. But if you go ahead and you burn a piece of wood, can you undo the burning of that wood? No. So that is a chemical reaction that's occurring there. So the big thing that I want you to remember is the law of conservation of energy. This is going to help you out throughout the GED, and it's going to help you out if you go on to college or basically anything, okay? So it's energy cannot be created or destroyed, but only changed from one form into another, or transferred from one object into another, okay? So if you've ever played pool before, okay, or billiards or any of those types of games, okay, and the ball hits the other ball, that's a transfer of energy, right? So energy cannot be created or destroyed. So you're not destroying the energy. Some of it gets transferred into the sound. A tiny, tiny little bit gets transferred into heat. That's another indicator of a chemical reaction is that maybe you hear something, maybe you see a flame. A flame is always a really good indicator of a chemical reaction. What you'll be asked to do on the GED science test is balancing chemical equations. And a lot of these things you might not remember all of the elements. That's perfectly fine. The big thing to remember is that the total number of elements on one side of the reaction must be equal to the total number of elements on the other side of the reaction. Okay? So if you look here, so let's just pretend we don't know any of these elements. So we have three C's, right? We have this smaller number here that's representing how many C's we have. So we have three of those. We have eight H's. We have two O's. And that's all on the left side of the chemical reaction. So the separation occurs with this arrow, okay? So that is, and this arrow represents yield. So if I were to read this, I would say C8 or C3H8 plus O2 yields H2O plus CO2, okay? It's some of it in this process does get transferred into maybe heat, maybe light, whatever it may be, right? So it's not a perfect 100% conversion on what we're writing down, but for the most part, think of this as like the recipe. So if you put in these pieces here, you'll get these pieces out, and in this type of combination. Well, you look down below and you ask yourself, is this chemical reaction balanced? Do I have the same number of carbon as on the left as I do on the right? Well, no. Do I have the same number of hydrogen on the left as I do on the right? No. So right away, we don't have a balanced chemical reaction. So you want to be able to review this, okay? Pause the video for a little bit, look at this, see if you can balance this. The way that you do that is going through multiplication in a way, okay? So if I wanted to get 3 carbon on this right side, what would I have to multiply this CO2 by? Well, I would have to multiply the CO2 by 3, okay? That would then give me 3 carbon, but then I have 2 O's. I have 2 oxygen, right? So 3 times the 2 is 6. So I would have 6 oxygen right here, right? And I would have 3 carbon. So I would have to add the the 6 oxygen, I would want to write that down. I now have 6 oxygen and 3 carbon. And then I look at this and I'm like, oh, well, I need 8 hydrogen. I need 8 H's. So what do I multiply the H2 by to get the 8, right? So you H2, so you want to multiply that by 4, okay? That would give you then 8 of those, and you would actually have an abundance of oxygen. So you'd want to go over here and balance it again, okay? I think I have another solved version a little bit later on. The small numbers after the letters are how many are present, okay? So there's 3 carbon, 8 oxygen, or 8 hydrogen, sorry, 2 oxygen, and so on. The arrow showing that a reaction is happening. Something is happening when you have this arrow, especially when it's going in one direction. That means that it's only happening in one way, okay? If the arrow is going both ways, that means that you'll find an equilibrium between the two reactions that are occurring. So here, yeah, now we have a balanced, this is, if you look back, if you rewind just a little bit, you'll see the differences here. So they put the 4 in front of the H2O and the 3 in front of the CO2, and that gave them 3, 8, and 10 on the right side. But then you have to balance it out on the left side again, okay? So it's a back and forth. You won't be asked directly to balance, to the best of my knowledge, you won't be asked to balance an equation, but what you'll be asked is, are they balanced? So they'll show you a chemical reaction, and they'll ask you, okay, is this balanced? And you have to answer yes or no, or which one out of these groups is going to be a balanced chemical reaction. So to kind of change speed, like I said, like this is just a rushed, like if you're in a hurry to kind of get some general information down about the science GED, that's what this video is for. And if you are liking it, I hope that you're commenting, liking, and subscribing, because it's going to help me help other people out. So even if you watch this video for the 5 minutes that I've been talking, make sure you hit the like button. It's going to really go a long ways for me. So this is going to go a little bit more into the physics that you might find on the GED science test. So distance, velocity, and time, okay? So distance that's the measurable length traveled. So from point A to point B, what's the distance, okay? So the length. If you're familiar with absolute values, these kind of come in handy when you're measuring distances. Velocities, that's the speed at which something is traveling, okay? So in a way, think of if you're traveling from one city to another city, you are going at a certain velocity. I mean, there might be some ramp up and ramp down, but that's acceleration. We're not going to get into that quite that right here. So if you fly to another city, that's going to be your time. So 2 hours to fly from what city to another city. Distance, velocity, and time, okay? So you might see these equations, or you might have to use one of these equations. And what I've put down is all of the different kind of forms of the distance equals velocity times time equation. You can just go through this with algebra, so d equals v times t, or t equals d divided by v, or v equals d divided by t, okay? So subjects on the GED, you'll have the life science, so that's human body basics, life and energy, ecosystems, organization of life, and heredity, okay? Those Punnett squares from the last video, that's where that heredity comes in. I would study a little bit about the water cycles, the different energy cycles, and balances of an ecosystem, okay? And I'll probably do quite a few videos on all of those. The physical science section of the GED, well, that's heat, temperature, chemical reactions, like we were just talking about, work and motion, structure of matter. So that's where you want to have some understanding of the atomic type of diagram, right? You want to be able to identify what a proton, neutron, and an electron is. And I'm sure eventually I'll come across and I'll do a video for all of those as well. Earth and space science, there's just a little bit of your Earth and space science on, and I haven't even mentioned this, yeah, carbon and water cycle, Earth and its components, the cosmos, right? So as far as the Earth and its components, definitely make sure you're studying different types of graphs, maybe even some maps, and like the migration maps specifically. Earth and its components, there you might have tectonic plates, and just kind of having a light understanding of Earth and space. I would focus on life science and physical science. when it comes to the science GED. And that's it. I know it was super fast, really, really, really fast video. And I hope that if you are wanting to help me help other people, like, comment, subscribe. It will be amazing. I promise you. The whole goal of this channel is just to help people get their GED, help them learn math, help them learn science, social studies, whatever they need help learning. I want to help people help themselves, basically. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and I appreciate you. Thank you very much.